Right now, you lit something on fire today. Maybe you turned a knob on your stove. Maybe you struck a match for a candle. Maybe you just flicked a lighter open and closed because the sound satisfies you. You didn't think about it. You didn't ask permission. Fire is yours, whenever you want it, as much as you want. And the only danger you worry about is maybe burning your finger or setting off a smoke alarm. But for most of human history, fire was not yours. It belonged to the group. And if you used it wrong, the punishment wasn't a fine, it was exile or death. Because fire, before it was warmth and cooking and safety, was the most dangerous thing a human group could carry. And the people who figured out how to control it didn't celebrate. They panicked. They made rules. They assigned guards. They turned the thing that kept them alive into the first crime in human history. Let's start with the obvious problem. Fire spreads. A single ember carried on dry grass can outrun a human being. In a world of savanna grassland, a dropped coal doesn't just go out. It becomes a line of flame that moves faster than you can warn anyone and your entire world. The grass you walk through, the brush you hide behind, the trees that shade you, the dry leaves that roof your shelter, all of it is fuel. One mistake with fire doesn't burn your dinner, it burns your world. Archaeologists have found burned layers at sites across Africa and the Middle East that stretch for miles. Some of these ancient burn scars are so extensive that they could only have been caused by uncontrolled fire. And here's what that means. Early humans didn't just discover fire, they survived it. They lived through the first wildfires they accidentally created, and they learned fast that the thing warming their hands could erase their entire territory in an afternoon. But spreading was only the first danger. Fire reveals you. In a landscape where every predator can smell smoke and every enemy group can see it, a fire is a signal flare telling everything within 10 miles exactly where you are. At night, a flame is visible from impossibly far away. During the day, the smoke column rises in a straight line that carries your location like a map. For a species that survived by being small, quiet, and hard to find, fire was a betrayal of everything that kept them alive. Imagine you're a group of 20 people huddled near a riverbed. You've spent all day staying downwind of a lion pride. You've moved silently. You've hidden your tracks. And then someone lights a fire. Now, every hyena within 2 miles knows there's meat here. Every leopard knows there's a group too distracted to watch the dark. Every neighboring band of humans knows exactly where you are, and that you probably have something worth taking. Fire made you visible, and visibility, in that world, was a vulnerability that could kill you faster than the cold. So the first rule was simple. Not everyone gets to touch the fire, and that rule changed everything. Because once fire became controlled by specific people, it became the first technology that required social governance. The axe didn't need a guard. A sharpened stone doesn't burn down the forest if you drop it. But fire demands constant attention. Someone has to feed it. Someone has to watch it. Someone has to decide when it goes out and when it stays lit. And that someone suddenly has power that no one else has. At a site called Gesher Banat Yaakov in Israel, archaeologists found evidence of controlled fire use dating back roughly 790,000 years. That's not just burned bone. That's organized hearths, stones arranged in a circle, ash layers concentrated in specific spots. Someone decided where the fire went. Someone maintained it. Someone else was not allowed to move it. That arrangement, a central fire, a defined space, rules about who controls it, is the oldest social structure we can see in the archaeological record. Before kings, before priests, before laws written on stone, there was the firekeeper. And the firekeeper had the most terrifying job on Earth. If the fire went out, the group lost warmth, protection, cooked food, and the ability to see predators coming. But if the fire escaped, the group lost everything else. So the firekeeper sat there, sometimes for hours, sometimes through entire nights, watching embers that could destroy the world if they blinked wrong. Their entire existence was a calculation. Add too much fuel, and the flames get high enough to catch the shelter. Add too little, and the fire dies. Move it closer for warmth, and you risk sparks on dry bedding. Move it further, and the cold creeps in. Every decision was life or death for everyone. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because fire didn't just create the first job, it created the first crime. Think about what happens when someone breaks the fire rules. A child throws a brand into the grass. A hunter brings a live coal too close to the stored meat. Someone falls asleep on watch and the fire dies. In a world where the group's survival depends on that flame, these aren't accidents. They're threats to everyone. And threats to the group become the first punishable offenses. We don't have written records from 400,000 years ago, but we have human nature. And human nature, when survival is on the line, invents consequences fast. The group that let fire mistakes slide didn't survive. The group that enforced rules did. So exile, being cast out without fire, without the group, without protection, became the first death sentence. And it was specifically a fire sentence. Take someone's access to the hearth, and you've killed them as surely as a spear to the chest. But here's the part nobody talks about. Fire also created the first secret. Because if the group controls the fire, then knowing how to make fire becomes power. And for most of human history, most people probably couldn't make fire from nothing. They could maintain it, they could transport it, but striking a spark from stone, creating flame where there was none, that was specialized knowledge. And specialized knowledge in a small group is the original currency. When Ötzi the Iceman was found frozen in the Alps 5,300 years ago, he carried a complete fire kit in his belt. Tinder fungus, flint, iron pyrite, plant tinder as backup. He wasn't just carrying tools, he was carrying insurance against being cut off from the group's fire. Because even 5,000 years ago, losing your connection to the communal flame was dangerous enough that people prepared for it like they prepared for battle. And that leads to something even bigger. Fire didn't just create rules and crimes and secrets. It created the first ritual. Because the moment fire becomes controlled, it becomes symbolic. It's not just heat. It's the thing that separates human space from animal space. The circle of light becomes the circle of the group. Inside the firelight, you're human. Outside it, you're prey. That boundary is so powerful that it shows up in every culture on Earth. The hearth as the center of the home. The sacred flame that must never go out. The eternal fires of temples and shrines. All of it traces back to a group of ancient humans standing around a controlled burn and understanding for the first time that they had created a border between life and death. At Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found ash and burned bone layers deep inside the cave, roughly 1 million years old. That's not a campfire under the stars. That's fire carried into the dark, into a space that nature didn't warm, and used deliberately in a place where no animal had ever brought it. Someone walked into that cave with a burning brand and decided that this space, this dark hole in the earth, would be human space. The fire made it so. And once fire becomes the definition of human space, controlling who has access to it becomes the definition of the group itself. This is why fire was never just a tool. It was the first test of whether you could be trusted. Children learned fire discipline before they learned to hunt. New members of a group proved themselves by respecting the hearth. The fire was the center of the group, and the rules around it were the center of the group's identity. Break those rules, and you weren't just careless. You weren't one of us. So here's the full picture. Fire spread, and that meant uncontrolled fire could destroy everything you needed to live. Fire revealed you, and that meant every flame was a risk you had to calculate against every predator and every enemy. Fire demanded a keeper, and that created the first specialized role. The first concentration of power, the first person whose job was watching something instead of finding food. Fire created the first crime, because mistakes with fire weren't private. They killed the whole group. Fire created the first secret, because knowing how to make it set you apart. And fire created the first ritual, because the circle of light became the border between human and everything else. Every law, every border, every social contract, every concept of inside and outside, all of it traces back to a group of ancient humans standing around a flame and realizing that this thing could save them or end them. And the only thing deciding which one it would be was whether they could control each other. And now, look at you. You flicked that lighter today without a thought. You turned that stove knob and never once considered that the flame answering you was the same flame that once demanded a guard, a rule, a punishment, a ritual. You have fire in your pocket, on your counter, in your car, and nobody ever told you that you weren't allowed. You don't ask permission to be warm. You don't prove yourself worthy of light. You don't sit in the dark wondering if the person watching the embers will stay awake. You have beaten fire so completely that you've forgotten it was ever a problem, but it was. For hundreds of thousands of years, it was the problem, and the rules we invented to survive it became the rules we still use to live with each other. The first law wasn't written on stone. It was written in ash. And the first crime wasn't theft or murder. It was letting the fire escape.